Hey friends, welcome back. I am Jason, and let's talk about the most useful knots. So first off, storage of any kind of rope is always a pain in the neck. I like to put it in these jam bags, this dry sack here, and it keeps my longer ropes and cordages from getting all tangled into this giant pile of knot mess. So all you really got to do is just feed the rope in there, and it just keeps on coming. I use what I need out of the bag right there. That's plenty for what I need to do right now. And then I just roll this thing back up like that, clip it off, and then I've got my rope managed, and I don't have this tangled up mess. And when it's ready to put the rope back in there, when I want to put it away, when I'm done for the day, I just open up the bag, and then I just feed the rope back in like that. And it really never gets tangled up. It comes out nice and easy. It never becomes a problem. It takes a second. It takes a little bit of time to put it back in the bag, especially if you're working with hundreds of feet of rope. But man, it does save you a lot of trouble from having to untangle a mess like you would with like a big long extension cord or something like that. Oh, by the way, you can do this with extension cords. I use buckets for my extension cords oftentimes. I'll put my extension cord coiled down in a bucket, and then I can pull it out of there and feed it back in, and without it getting all tangled up. That works pretty good too. But anyway, let's get to our knots. The first knot that we're going to go over is a bowline knot. And the beauty of a bowline knot is that you can put a tremendous amount of force on it and you can still untie it afterwards. So that's pretty amazing. It's really versatile, and it's one that I use all the time. So I've got the end of my line here, right? End of my line, and it just depends on how big you want to have your loop. I'm going to tie a loop in the end of this line using a bowline. I'm going to take about a foot or so, give or take, and I'm going to make myself a small loop. I just twist the rope and it makes a loop like that. So I just twist the rope, makes a loop. I take this end right here where the tag end is, this portion right there, and I poke it through. I just poke it through like that, but not all the way. Just leave it exposed kind of like that. And then I'll take this tag end right here, stick it through, and that's what's going to form my loop. And you see how this is all nice and loose right now, loosey-goosey? As I pull right here, that's going to kind of flip over like that. And that, my friends, is a well-tied bowline knot. And I can yank on this knot as hard as I want. Pull on this thing, tug on it. I can hang from this knot. I can rappel off of a building with this knot right here. And then when I want to untie it, see this part right here, that portion of the knot? All I got to do is break it. I push right there, and that breaks the knot, and it all comes untied. See that? Right there. The bowline knot is where it is at. So really quickly, make myself a loop, like so. I tuck it through, take my tag in, stick it through there, and then I slowly pull. You can do it quick if you want, but you just gotta make sure it's kind of loose right there so it flops over. And that is my bowline knot. There's lots of different ways to do this. You can do a bowline knot just to make a loop like that if I need to hook it into a carabiner or something like that in my harness. If I need to, I don't know, hook it to a shackle or something like that I'm using to pull my truck out of the ditch, whatever. If I need to tie around this dead tree and I want to pull this tree down, I can do the same thing. I can take my line, I can wrap it around the tree like so, right? See that? So I've got it around the tree. I can make that same loop right here. I can tuck it through, just exactly the same knot. I've just got a little bit more slack here. I stick it through like so. I can snug it up on the tree if I want, but I don't really necessarily have to in this application. And then I pull, making sure it flops over. And now I've got this really strong bowline knot attached to this tree, right? And I can yank on this thing all day long with thousands of pounds of force. And generally speaking, I can still just untie it really, really easily like that. Let's say, here's my bag. Let's say I need, let's say I've got my tractor over here on this far side over here. And I've got this great big long rope like this. I've tied off to my tractor right there, and I'm gonna haul this rope over here. And I've got all this slack. I've got a mountain of slack in my rope. I can do exactly the same thing, just with it doubled up, right? So I've got this, I'm in the middle of my rope right now. You can see all this slack. I've got 20 feet of rope slacked out this direction. And I need a loop tied around this. I need a knot tied around this tree right here. I'll just double it over like that. I go around the tree like that, and I do exactly the same knot. I'm just doing it with double, right? Just double line. So I'll make exactly that same loop like that right there. I'll stick a portion of it through, right? So I make myself a loop like that, like I did before, right? I'll take a portion of the line right here that's going around the tree. I'll stick it through, and then I could stick this end, this doubled over loop end through, and then I pull, and I've got my bowline knot right there. Same exact thing. Really, really versatile knot. I use it all the time for all sorts of different applications. And like I said, the best part about it is you can put a whole lot of force on there and still untie the thing. Look who decided to join us. Bushcat. Hello, kitty. Bushcat likes knots, don't you, kitty? So in a recent video, someone told me in the comment section that demonstrating knots is not one of my gifts. And that's what inspired me to do this video. So in the comment section, you can let me know if I'm doing a good job or not, or if it truly is not one of my gifts and I should just give up. Kitty, kitty. The hardest part of demonstrating knot tying is positioning the camera at the right angles. It's difficult when you're doing it by yourself. That's why I've recruited my teammate here. If only we could train Bushcat to be the cameraman, that would be helpful.
What's that supposed to mean?
She eats less. Makes less noise. All right, smells better. Next knot, I believe, is called a slippery hitch. At least that's what we're gonna call it today. This is one I use all the time for tying up my shelters, ridge lines, and stuff like that. It's probably the easiest knot that you're going to ever learn, because if you know how to tie your shoes, you know how to do this knot. You take the line around your tree or whatever thing that you're trying to tie to, doesn't really matter. You cross the line over like that, and then you tuck it through the space between the line and the tree, just like you would if you're tying your shoes. You cross the line over and you snug it up, just like that. It doesn't have to be super snug. If you want to have someone hold your finger there, that's really helpful, but not necessary. And then, just like you're tying your shoes, you'd make your rabbit ears, right? But in this situation, you're only going to make one of them. So I go back around this portion of the line right here, the main portion of the line. I go around it, and then I tuck a loop through like this. And I pull on that, and I can cinch it up to the tree. And that is a super strong knot that will not fail. It's amazing how strong this knot is right there. A guy that works on a cattle ranch in the comment section one time, he told me that they use this knot right here to tie huge, like thousands of pound steers up, and it's never failed. So that's got to tell you something right there. And then again, the beauty of this knot right here is I can put a lot of weight on it. And then when I'm ready to break camp, I want to get this knot loose. When I'm ready to untie this thing, I just pull this tag in, and it all comes undone. So again, I just go around the tree right there with my tag end of the line. I cross it over just like I'm tying my shoes. I come around the main portion of the line, I tuck this through and snug, just like I tie my shoes right there. And then I can pull on this all day long, and that ain't never gonna come undone. Now let's say I wanted a great big long ridge line here, or maybe I wanted a clothesline to hang up all my soggy wet gear. It's been raining for days, and I need to have a whole bunch of space on this long line here to dry out all my equipment, sleeping bags and everything like that. Thing about ropes, just a general tip, is try not to walk on the ropes if you can help it, because it digs dirt into them, and that dirt over time can be abrasive and it can cause unnecessary wear and tear on your rope. So try not to walk on them, especially if it's ropes that you're going to be trusting your life to, or you're pulling big heavy things like pulling trees down and stuff with them. Try not to walk on them if you can help it. Say I want a ridge line right here up to this tree. So I've got my loop connected to that dead tree right there. I pull on it really, really hard. So watch out, Sage. Right there. So what I would do if I wanted that is I would wrap around this tree right here. And again, I've got a really long rope. If you've got short sections of rope, which are, generally speaking, pretty handy. You don't necessarily need 200 feet of rope like I've got right here, but you don't want to cut your rope if you don't have to. So what I would do is I would take a bite out of the rope like this, and I would come around my tree like so, and I would use my bite right here, the middle of my rope, to tie this thing off. And I just pull using the friction on the back of the tree to snug it up like so. I go around my rope like that. I've got my bite around the rope right here, and I can pull on this super hard, and that makes this really snug. If it's not quite tight enough, I can come around again. I can pull here, take out some of that slack there. And if I want to make it really secure, I can come back around the tree like so. And then I'll just hitch it off. I'll just half hitch it off. So I'll go around the line and I'll come through like that with a single half hitch. And then I'll just do a slippery hitch to finish it like that. And that is super secure. It is never going to come undone until I'm ready for it. And I've got a nice tight ridge line right here. Nice tight ridge line that I can hang my stuff from if I want to dry all my gear out. So now when I'm ready to untie this thing, I just pull on this tag in, and it all comes undone pretty dang easy. Now there's lots of ways to do this. We could do like a trucker's hitch. A trucker's hitch is pretty dang handy too, and you can do it in the middle of a line like this. I would want to do for a trucker's hitch. So if I want to make this really tight, I might even pull this dead tree down that I've got tied over there. But what I would do is I'd make myself a little slip loop. So I make a loop just like I've done before when I was doing that bowline knot. I make a loop like that. And then I take this portion of the line that's closest to the tree that I'm tying to. That's important. Do not use this portion of the line that's closest to that far end over there, because it will just lock down on itself. So I make a twist in the rope. I take this portion that's closest to the tree that I'm tying to, and I stick it through that loop. See that? And that just makes a little loop right there. Easy to get undone because of that right there. I can just pull on it. If you get lots and lots of tension on there, sometimes it's a little hard, but you can usually yank them and get that knot out. So I make a twist right there. See that? And then I stick this portion of the line here closest to that tree through, and then I pull, and that gives me a loop. Okay? And you might need to play with it, the distance from where you're trying to go. So I'm going to go a little bit further away and make my loop here. Pretty fast and easy, just like that. I can make it bigger if I want by pulling it out like that, or I can make it smaller. I can adjust that, and then I'll go around my tree like I did before. And watch this. I'll take a bite out of this rope and I'll stick it through. I'll just double it over. That's what a bite means. Just double the rope over. I don't know why they had to come up with a different term. I don't know. And then I'll pull on that bite, on that doubled over rope, and I can really cinch down this. I can really crank on this thing. And this is a really stretchy rope, so I'm really getting a whole lot out of it. And I'm just cranking and cranking and cranking. So what happens is I've kind of run out of space. Like, this is plenty tight enough for like a clothesline or something like that. But if I wanted this really tight, banjo string tight, I would move this loop further down the line. So that's what I'll do to get it really tight. So I'll just undo my loop here. See that? Just give it a yank, and usually they come out. So I'll move my loop here. If I can get some more tension on that line, I've got my loop. I come back around my tree. Take this doubled over section. If the line was short, I would just stick the tag in through. But since this thing, I've got another 100 feet of rope in that bag there, and I don't want to cut this thing, and I don't want to waste it. So I just stick the bite through there, a doubled over portion, and then I yank on it. Now I can really crank on this thing. Look at that. I might pull that dead tree over by doing this. Now that is tight right there. And then all I got to do, this portion right here where I've got it doubled over and through the loop, I just pinch it like this. I just pinch it, and that friction usually holds it. I can let go. That's all you really need. Slip the little on me. I'll pinch it like that, and then I can make myself another one of those slippery hitch loops, right? So I go over the top like this with my line. I go over the top and then I tuck it through and I pull. And that locks it down. I had plenty of excess right here, too much excess, but that's okay. So that is a slippery hitch right there that's holding it all nice and tight. And I've got a really tight line right here if I should need it to be really tight for some reason. So there's your trucker's hitch. Hopefully that's clear. I'll just show it one more time. And when I want to get it undone, I just pull on that loop and it all comes down. So that one got really tight. There it goes. Sometimes you got to give it a few yanks to get that loop out. But I make myself a loop, stick it through like that. I go around the tree with my rope. And since it's really long, I take a bite in it like that. And then I pull right there. Pinch it off like that. And then I take it over the line. I take the line over this portion and then I tuck it through like that, making another one of those slippery loops, not letting it go all the way through. If I pull it all the way through like this, it'll lock down in like a half hitch right there, and that's going to be hard to untie if it gets really tight. So I don't want to do that. I want to do a slippery loop right there. So I go over the line, tuck it through, and pull, and that's not going to go anywhere. But until I'm ready for it, and then all I got to do is yank on it, and it all comes free. So that trucker's hitch is super handy, and as the name implies, like a trucker would use to tie down a load. And I use that all the time, like in the back of my truck, to really cinch down. It's like, you know, an old school ratchet strap. It's essentially the same deal. You can put a whole lot of force and hold something down. And that's probably what I use it for more than anything else. But it's also quite handy for woodsy applications. All right, let's see. What other knots do I use all the time? That bowline knot and the trucker's hitch, that slippery hitch that goes around the trees, I mean, I use those for just about everything. I don't know a whole lot of knots. I know very few, actually. I just use the same ones over and over and over again for various different applications. But let's say there's a few others that I use. One of them is just like a jam knot hitch, a jam knot loop. Sorry, a jam knot loop. So what I would do here, just a really simple loop. It works great with paracord and smaller diameter cordages and stuff. This is a little big, but it still gets the job done. It still would work. What I would do here is I would make myself a small little knot, just an overhand knot right here. See that? So I just cross it over, stick the tag in through, and I make myself a little kind of semi-permanent knot at the end of my cordage. Now with that, I can do all kinds of things. I can make myself a small, simple little loop like this. I double the line over, I stick this tag in portion through, but not all the way through, and I let that jam knot catch at the very last. It catches. And now I've got myself a loop that's really, really strong. I mean, you're never gonna get that. That's not gonna slip. That's not gonna come undone until you're ready for it. And you just pull on that big knot at the end and it all comes undone. So I've got my little jam knot at the end. I double my line over, make it a little twist, little loop. I stick this portion of the tag in through and I pull, and that gives me a loop right there. And as long as you're not yanking on it super, super hard, it's pretty easy to untie just by pulling on that knot, on that jam knot at the end. It all comes undone. And you can use this for all sorts of applications. So like, let's say I wanted to tie around this little tree right here. So I could go around the tree like this. I could go over the line like so. And I could just pull until that jam knot gets kind of secured like that. And now this isn't going to hold a tremendous amount of force, but it does the job if you're just doing like a ridge line or whatever. And then when I want to untie the thing, I just push right here and I break that knot right there and it all comes undone. Not quite as easy. I don't prefer that over just that shoelace knot. This one right here. This is the one that I prefer for most applications just because it's so easy. And you could keep a jam knot in the end if you're worried about a knot slipping through. There's no way that's going to slip through because of that jam knot at the end. See that? So I like that for that reason. Another good way to use this if I wanted to attach to a tree or really any other object is I could take my jam knot and I could go around my object, my tree, or you know, the person that I'm trying to tie up. You go around the tree, and then you go around the main line like this, back around the tree, and then you stick that knot through that loop that you've created right there. And you could snug that down slowly but surely, and that knot will keep it from poking through. And you could put quite a bit of pressure on that too. And once it gets snug, I mean, that's not gonna slip. If it gets a little slack-ended, it might eventually try to work that knot through, but that works quite well too, just for tying something off temporarily. And when you're ready to break it, just take the tension off and flick that over and it all comes undone. The next one that's really good that I used to use a lot when I was into rock climbing and rappelling and stuff is there's just a figure eight. Figure eight's a really strong knot. I mean, it doesn't get much stronger than a figure eight. So what you can do, I like the figure eight knot because of how strong it is. If I wanted to trust my life to a knot, this is probably the one. But the bowline is close second, and I kind of prefer the bowline because it's just so easy to untie. This one, when you get a whole lot of tension on it, sometimes it gets a little bit tricky. But anyway, what I would do is I would go around my object. Let's say I was going to rappel off of this cliff right here, and I was going to want to trust my life to a knot. What I would do is I would find where I want to put my knot. So I would place it around the tree, and then I'd give myself a little bit of space here, and I would tie myself my 8. So what I do is I make a loop just like I did before on all the other knots. I twist it, and that gives me a loop. And then instead of poking through this hole right here, what I would do is I would go back around that main portion of the line, like kind of over my thumb, and then I would tuck it through the back side. And that gives me this 8 right here, right? So one more time. So I make myself a loop by twisting the line. See that? I twist the line, make myself a loop, and then instead of going through here, I go around my thumb and then through the back side of that loop. And that gives me my 8, and I want to keep that nice and loose for right now. So then I go around my tree, or whatever, doesn't really matter, or the truck hitch, whatever, doesn't really matter what you're tying to. And then all I got to do after I've gone around my tree is I take my tag in here and I follow the line. I'm just chasing the line. So I take the tag in and I follow this main line. I go through like that, and then I go around like this. I'm just following it around, and then I go through, and then I go around, and then it ducks back through that hole there. So that's exactly what I'm going to do with my tag end. Like that. And then it's not that big a deal, but you just kind of clean it up a little bit. And then you've got this really pretty figure 8 knot right there that when you cinch down on, that thing ain't never coming undone until you're ready for it to come undone. And then you break it just the same way you would anything else. But that is a super, super strong knot right there. Generally, this tag end, you can make yourself a little safety knot if you wanted to. I tie this tag end off like that, and that keeps everything nice and clean, like so. And that's kind of the finished figure 8 knot, the way that I've always tied it. So anyway, one more time. And to break that knot, you can put a lot of pressure on here, and with bigger diameter cordages, bigger than this, like a climbing rope, it's easier. But even with this one, you just kind of break that knot. Sometimes you have to break it over your heel of your boot or over your knee or something like that. And you just kind of break that knot up, and then you can pull it loose. I make my figure 8. I got enough slack to go around my tree. All right, plenty of slack to go around the tree. I make my figure 8 by making a loop. I go over top of my thumb and then through the back side with all the excess right there, and that gives me an 8. I go around the tree, and then I chase the 8. I chase the 8 with my tag end. I follow it down, through, kind of cinch it up around the tree a little bit, follow it down through. I keep following that line around, and then up through that hole, like so, back around, and then down through the hole one more time, like that, and you'll end up with this really pretty looking 8. If it doesn't look like that, you did it wrong. It's pretty easy pass fail right there. If it doesn't look like a nice pretty 8, you did something wrong. Okay, and then you could tie off the end just to keep everything nice and tidy. That's how I do it. Not really necessary, it's not gonna slip. Tie off the end like that, and you've got this really nice, really strong knot that you could trust your life to. Now guys, there's probably a million knots out there, and they all have certain purposes, and some of them are just fancy and pretty to look at. I would say 99% of the time what I just showed you works for just about everything. Those are the knots that I use for everything. Some form, some variation of what you just saw is what I use all the time. So what I would recommend is that you go out and you practice these knots. You get yourself some string. Some paracord is probably the best thing to learn with. It's the easiest. I just use this because it's bigger, easier for you to see. But get yourself some paracord. Go out there and practice these knots and start figuring out how to work them. And you can come up with different variations of them that work for different applications. And you might just invent yourself a new knot and you can name it after yourself. It's always my goal. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I really do appreciate it. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Can't wait to see you on the next one. And until next time, what's the worst that could happen? Let's just go on 3.